sound of rustling leaves and cheerful woodland chatter. In the heart of Woodland Grove Elementary, where sunbeams danced through the canopy and autumn leaves painted the forest floor, something extraordinary was about to unfold. It was just another Tuesday morning, or so everyone thought, until Mrs. Owl, the school secretary, pinned that fateful flyer to the ancient oak notice board. Annual Woodland Race, prize Golden Acorn Trophy. The words seemed to shimmer in the morning light, catching the attention of every passing creature. But none was more captivated than Turbo, our shell-wearing friend, who had been quietly making his way to his morning classes. His eyes grew wide as he took in every detail of the announcement. The Golden Acorn Trophy, the most prestigious prize in all of Woodland Grove. It had been won by the fastest, the quickest, the most agile, but never by someone like him. Just as Turbo reached out his gentle green hand to take a flyer, a shadow loomed over him. Snickering sound. Well, 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 came the all-too-familiar voice of Rocket, the three-time champion rabbit. This isn't a slow crawl contest, Turbo. Why don't you stick to what you're good at? Like, carrying your house on your back. The other animals snickered, but something different happened this time. Instead of retreating into his shell as he usually did, Turbo carefully folded the flyer, tucked it into his shell pocket, and looked up. In his eyes, there wasn't fear or shame. There was a spark, a tiny flame that would soon grow into something much bigger. The breeze rustled through the trees, carrying whispers of what many thought would be just another victory for Rocket. But they didn't see what we saw. That quiet fire in Turbo's eyes, the slight straightening of his posture, the gentle determination in his smile. Sometimes the biggest adventures start with the smallest steps, and Turbo was about to take his first one. Sound of gentle footsteps and leaves crunching. In the heart of Woodland Grove, where the morning dew still clings to every leaf, there lives a remarkable turtle named Turbo. Now, you might think a turtle with racing dreams is quite unusual, and you'd be right. But Turbo, he's different. One crisp autumn morning, Turbo gathered all his courage and confided in his best friend, Zip, an energetic squirrel who could dart from tree to tree faster than you could blink. "I want to race," Turbo declared, his eyes shining with determination. Zip's whiskers twitched with concern, but seeing the fire in his friend's eyes, he couldn't help but smile. "Are you sure about this, buddy?" Zip asked gently, remembering all the times other animals had laughed at Turbo's slow pace. Racing isn't exactly, well, you know, but Turbo's mind was made up. Every morning, before the sun painted the sky in soft pinks and purples, he would drag his shell to the meadow. While other animals were still curled up in their cozy beds, Turbo was there, practicing. One step at a time. Sometimes he'd stumble, his shell tipping sideways. Sometimes he'd barely move at all. But he never gave up. You see, Turbo carried memories that fueled his determination. Memories of being a tiny turtle tot, watching rabbits and deer sprint through the forest. "You're a turtle," they'd say. "Turtles don't race." His teachers would pat his shell sympathetically. "Focus on what turtles do best," they'd suggest. Like moving slowly and steadily. But those words never sat right with Turbo. Every night, he'd dream of crossing finish lines, feeling the wind against his face. Even when his legs ached from training, even when other animals snickered as they passed by, Turbo kept pushing forward. Zip would often perch on a nearby branch, his heart torn between worry for his friend and admiration for Turbo's unwavering spirit. He'd watch as Turbo practiced his starts, his turns, marking his own racetrack with fallen leaves and twigs. "You know what, Turbo?" Zip called down one morning after watching his friend complete yet another lap around their homemade track. "Maybe being slow isn't about how fast you move. Maybe it's about how long you're willing to keep moving forward." And that's exactly what made Turbo special. In a world that told him to accept his limitations, he dared to dream bigger. With every sunrise, with every step, with every stumble and recovery, he was writing his own story. A story that proved that sometimes the biggest dreams come in the most unexpected packages. Because sometimes, just sometimes, it's not about being the fastest. It's about having the courage to start the race in the first place. In the rolling hills just outside the forest, where dreams take shape and determination finds its testing ground, we find our friend Turbo, a turtle with a heart bigger than his shell and an ambition that would make cheetahs chuckle. There he is, at the base of Hope Hill, the steepest training spot in all the woodland. The morning dew still clings to the grass, and Turbo's eyes are fixed on the summit with unwavering determination. His first attempt is, well, less than graceful. His tiny legs scramble against the slope, but gravity wins this round, sending him sliding back down on his shell. "Come on, Turbo," he mutters to himself. "You've got this." Second try, nope. Third attempt, another slide. Fourth time, getting closer, but still not quite there. The other animals have gathered to watch, some whispering, others trying not to giggle. But Turbo, he doesn't hear them. He's too focused on his goal. And then there's Rocket, the local track star, lounging in his hammock like he owns the place. those designer sunglasses perched on his nose, carrot smoothie in paw. "You know, buddy," he calls out to Turbo, "some of us are just born with it. I never had to train a day in my life." But something changes in Turbo's eyes. That fifth attempt, there's a fire there now. His muscles strain, his breath comes in short gasps, but inch by determined inch, he's moving up. The crowd goes quiet. Even Rocket lowers his sunglasses to watch. Finally, after what feels like forever, Turbo reaches the top. His legs are shaking, his shell is covered in dirt, but that smile could light up the whole forest. He's made it. Not because he was born fast, but because he refused to give up. From his hammock, Rocket just shrugs and sips his smoothie. "Whatever, dude, I still don't have to try." But Turbo doesn't care. He's too busy catching his breath and enjoying the view from the top. A view that means so much more when you've earned it the hard way. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't about being the fastest or the strongest. They're about being the one who gets back up again and again until you reach the top. And our friend Turbo, he's just getting started. This hill was just the beginning of his journey, but it taught him something priceless. With enough determination, even the slowest among us can climb the highest mountains. Squelch, squish, splat. Have you ever been so stuck that you felt like giving up? Well, that's exactly how our friend Turbo the Turtle felt when he discovered this particularly tricky swampy trail. The mud was thick, sticky, and seemed to have a mind of its own, pulling him deeper with every step. "Oh, Shell," Turbo muttered, his tiny legs frantically paddling against the gooey mess. "This is not what I signed up for." But you know what they say, when life gives you mud, you figure out how to swim in it. As Turbo struggled, he noticed something interesting. There were these little green fellows, frogs, just gliding through the mud like it was nothing. They'd hop, skip, and practically dance across the surface. Turbo watched them, his eyes growing wider with each graceful leap. "Hey, what's your secret?" he called out to a particularly bouncy frog. The frog just winked and continued its effortless journey. But Turbo was paying attention. He noticed how the frogs distributed their weight, how they used the mud's consistency to their advantage instead of fighting against it. Day after day, Turbo returned to that swampy trail. At first, it was just failure after failure. Splat, face in the mud. Squish, stuck again. But our determined little turtle didn't give up. He started experimenting with different movements. Instead of his usual steady crawl, he tried a sort of sliding motion, spreading his weight evenly across his shell. Sometimes he'd spin like a tiny muddy carousel, other times he'd rock back and forth until he found his rhythm. The other animals would gather around, watching this peculiar turtle who seemed determined to master the mud. Some laughed, some cheered, but Turbo didn't mind. He was too focused on his mission. Weeks passed, and slowly but surely something magical started happening. Turbo's muscles grew stronger, his movements became more precise. The mud that once held him captive began to feel more like a dance partner. One particularly sunny morning, Turbo approached the swamp with a new confidence. With a deep breath and a determined look in his eyes, he stepped onto the muddy trail. And would you believe it? He glided across that mud like he was skating on ice. The same frogs who had inspired him now watched in amazement as this shell-backed student became a master of the mud. What started as a frustrating obstacle had become Turbo's favorite training ground. Because sometimes the very things that hold us back can become the things that make us stronger, if we just keep pushing, learning, and believing in ourselves. And now, whenever other turtles find themselves stuck in the mud, they know exactly who to ask for help. "Just call me Turbo," he says with a smile. "The mud-sliding master." Rain pelts down from angry clouds, turning Turbo's carefully chosen training ground into a muddy mess. The little turtle who dreamed of becoming the fastest in the world now finds himself huddled beneath a large maple leaf, watching his hopes wash away with each heavy raindrop. "Just my luck," Turbo mutters, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. He'd spent weeks practicing here, pushing his tiny legs to move faster than any turtle had moved before. But now, the storm seems determined to destroy everything he's worked for. Crack! A branch snaps overhead, and before Turbo can react, it comes crashing down. He pulls into his shell just in time, but the impact leaves a small crack, a permanent reminder of this terrible day. The pain isn't just physical, it's a blow to his spirit. Seeking better shelter, Turbo slowly makes his way to a nearby tree, his movements even more hesitant than usual. The crack in his shell feels like nature's way of saying, "Give up." Turtles aren't meant to be fast. As he sits there, feeling smaller than ever, something catches his eye. A tiny ladybug, no bigger than one of his toes, is fighting against the wind. The storm keeps pushing her back, but she doesn't give up. One wing beat at a time, she battles forward, determined to reach her destination. Turbo watches, transfixed. The ladybug gets knocked down once, twice, 3 times, but each time she takes flight again. She's so small, so fragile, yet she refuses to let the storm win. If she can, I can. Turbo whispers to himself, his voice growing stronger with each word. The crack in his shell? It's not a sign to quit, it's his first battle scar. The flooded training ground? Just another obstacle to overcome. As the ladybug finally reaches her destination, Turbo feels something change inside him. The storm still rages, but his determination burns brighter than ever. He may be a turtle, slow, steady, shell-cracked and all, but he's a turtle who won't let a storm of setbacks wash away his dreams. The rain continues to fall, but Turbo no longer sees it as his enemy. Instead, it's just another part of his journey. A journey that's teaching him that true speed isn't just about how fast you can go, but how steadfast you can remain when everything tries to slow you down. In the quiet corners of the forest, something remarkable was happening. Remember Turbo, our determined little turtle who was once the subject of snickers and sideways glances? Well, things were about to change in the most heartwarming way. Day after day, the forest animals had watched Turbo's unwavering dedication. Rain or shine, he'd be there, pushing himself, trying to be faster. At first, they thought it was silly, a turtle trying to be quick. But there's something powerful about watching someone refuse to give up. The first one to come around was Zip, the energetic squirrel who used to be Turbo's biggest critic. One morning, he showed up with a little stopwatch he'd fashioned from an old acorn and some twigs. "Hey, Turbo," he called out. "Want to know your lap times?" The genuine smile on his face showed he wasn't there to mock. Soon, the whispers in the forest changed from giggles to gasps of admiration. The rabbits who once hopped past him with teasing bounds now stopped to watch his practice. The deer family started clearing fallen branches from his training path each morning. But it was the birdie family that truly touched Turbo's heart. They spent 3 whole days weaving together colorful leaves and flowers to create a beautiful banner that read, "Go Turbo Go." They hung it across 2 branches right above his practice route. And every morning they would perch there, chirping encouragement as he passed beneath. Even old wise owl, who rarely left his tree, would hoot words of wisdom. Slow and steady wins more than just the race, young one. It wins hearts too. The change in the community was as dramatic as it was beautiful. The same animals who once laughed at his dreams now gathered regularly to cheer him on. They started keeping track of his progress, celebrating every small improvement, and supporting him through the tough days. For Turbo, this transformation meant more than just having cheerleaders. Each supportive smile, each word of encouragement, each tiny act of kindness proved that his journey wasn't just about becoming faster. It was about showing everyone that with enough determination, you can change not only yourself, but also how the world sees you. As he practiced that evening, looking up at the cheerful banner swaying in the breeze, surrounded by his newfound supporters, Turbo felt something he'd never experienced before. It wasn't just pride in his progress, it was the warm, wonderful feeling of being truly seen and accepted for who he was and what he was trying to achieve. In that moment, Turbo realized that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in reaching your goal, but in inspiring others to believe in you, and more importantly, to believe in themselves. The morning sun cast long shadows across the forest clearing as excited animals gathered from every corner of the woodland. The air buzzed with anticipation. This was the day of the big race everyone had been waiting for. Turbo the tortoise was already there, having arrived well before sunrise. You could see the quiet determination in his eyes as he did his gentle warm-up stretches. He'd been preparing for this moment for months, and his calm demeanor spoke volumes about his readiness. Then came Rocket the hare, fashionably late as always, high-fiving his fans and soaking up their cheers. "Sorry to keep you waiting, folks," he called out with his signature smirk. "Had to get my beauty sleep. Not that I needed to win this race." The forest creatures laughed and cheered, completely caught up in Rocket's charismatic presence. The wise old owl perched high on his branch as the official announcer cleared his throat. The clearing fell silent. "Racers, please take your positions," he hooted formally. Rocket bounced to the starting line, still waving to his admirers, while Turbo took his place quietly, eyes fixed on the path ahead. "Racers ready?" The owl's voice echoed through the trees. The tension was electric. "Go!" In a blur of fur and bravado, Rocket shot forward like an arrow, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. The crowd went wild, jumping and cheering his name. "Go Rocket, show them how it's done." Meanwhile, Turbo began his steady pace, each step purposeful and measured. Few noticed him starting his journey. All eyes were on the speeding hare disappearing into the distance. The forest path stretched ahead, and while the crowds continued celebrating Rocket's explosive start, Turbo kept his focus, knowing that this race was far from over. After all, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. As our racers continue their journey, they face one of the toughest sections of the track, a stretch that would test not just their speed, but their wisdom and patience too. Rabbit Rocket, still riding high on his early lead, spots the mud trap ahead. "Ha, this is nothing," he boasts, zipping forward without a second thought. But sometimes being too quick to judge can lead to messy situations. Quite literally in this case. Splat, down goes Rocket, his pristine fur now coated in thick, sticky mud. "Ugh, gross," he grumbles, trying to shake it off like it's no big deal. But you can see the frustration in his eyes as he wipes the mud from his face. His signature speed isn't quite so impressive when he's sliding around like a rookie on ice skates. Meanwhile, Turtle Turbo approaches the same obstacle with that calm, steady demeanor we've come to know. He carefully picks his path, placing each foot with purpose. Sure, he's moving slower, but every step is safe and sure. As they reach the Hill of Hope, Turbo's consistent training really starts to shine. Remember those early morning workouts we saw? They're paying off now. His strong legs carry him steadily upward, while Rocket, still recovering from his mud bath, attempts a dramatic leap to make up for lost time. But here's the thing about shortcuts. They don't always work out. Rocket slips again, sliding back down while Turbo keeps climbing, slow and steady. That gap between them, it's starting to close and you can feel the momentum shifting. You know what they say? It's not about how fast you go, it's about how far you get. And right now, Turbo's patient approach is proving that sometimes the slower path is actually the faster way forward. Crowd noises fade in. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest trail. The race that started with so much fanfare hours ago has come down to this, the final stretch. Two competitors, neck and neck, each step bringing them closer to glory. Rocket, who's led for most of the race, can almost taste victory. His heart pounds with anticipation as he pushes his tired legs harder, faster. The finish line banner flutters in the distance, a beacon of hope and triumph. But then, crack! A fallen log hidden in the shadows catches his foot. Time seems to slow as Rocket tumbles forward, a cry of frustration echoing through the trees. "No, no, no!" The ground meets him with an unforgiving embrace. Behind him, Turbo's steady footfalls grow louder. The tortoise's breathing is labored but controlled, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. He's been here before, countless times in training, pushing through when others would quit. The crowd, sensing the shift in momentum, begins to stir. It starts as a whisper, then grows into a thunderous chant. "Turbo! Turbo! Turbo!" Each step is deliberate, each breath measured. While others might rush, Turbo maintains his pace, the same steady rhythm that's carried him through the entire race. His eyes shine with determination as he pushes forward, proving that sometimes slow and steady really does win the race. Crowd chanting fades up, then out. Sound of cheering and applause. Ladies and gentlemen, what an incredible moment we're witnessing here in the Great Forest. Against all odds, against every prediction, Turtle Turbo has just done the impossible. The steady warrior of the forest has crossed that finish line mere inches ahead of the legendary Rocket Rabbit. You should see the scene unfolding before us. The crowd has absolutely erupted. Animals from every corner of the forest are jumping, hooting, and hollering. Little Zip Squirrel, Turbo's biggest fan, has bounded down from the stands and wrapped his tiny arms around our champion's shell, tears of joy streaming down his furry face. But wait, what's this? Rocket Rabbit, who just days ago was boasting about his guaranteed victory, is making his way towards Turbo. The forest falls silent. You can hear a pine needle drop. Everyone's holding their breath, wondering what the famously proud rabbit will do. Slower, more emotional tone. "You earned it," Rocket says, his ears drooping slightly. I underestimated you. All this time, I thought being the fastest was everything." Turbo looks up at his longtime rival, a gentle smile crossing his face. "It was never about speed, Rocket," he says, his voice filled with wisdom. "It's about heart. It's about believing in yourself, even when nobody else does." Ina building excitement. Now, Mayor Owl is approaching with the legendary Golden Acorn Trophy. As Turbo's weathered hands lift that gleaming prize toward the setting sun, you can see decades of determination reflected in his eyes. Every early morning training session, every doubt he overcame, every step of his journey, it was all worth it. The forest creatures begin to chant his name. Turbo, Turbo, Turbo. And there it is, friends. The banner unfurling above the finish line, catching the last rays of sunlight. Believe in the slow, steady, and strong. You know, sometimes life isn't about being the quickest or the flashiest. Sometimes it's about having the courage to keep going, one step at a time, no matter how long the journey might be. Turbo didn't just win a race today. He showed us all what it truly means to be a champion. Remember this day, forest friends. Remember the turtle who dared to dream big, who never gave up, and who proved that with enough heart and determination, even the most impossible dreams can come true.